how do you I always have this conversation with my friends all the time. How do you feel about the new what is it, Jeffrey Dahmer series that's coming out? Do you think that, I've been saying in the past couple of years that with, serial killers and things like that, that it's being rehashed. How do you
Mhm.
feel? Do you feel like they're being put on a pedestal? Like I feel like we have like a weird obsession with like crime and murder and just putting them on a pedestal. What are your opinions on that?
I'm glad you asked because I'm one of the
Question.
people that I don't like them at all.
Okay.
And I always, again, that compassion, I think about the families and that rehashing of their trauma. And I'm a firm believer in knowing obviously who your suspect is for a horrible
Mhm.
crime, but focusing on those victims and their names and honoring those legacies. Because I believe in as long as you speak someone's name, their legacy will never be forgotten. And a lot of these victims were robbed of their lives because of the
Mhm.
selfishness of these individuals. I'm all for ethical true crime. I enjoy a good true crime podcast. I like being able to listen to cases because as a forensic professional, I think of, how would I have responded to that scene? What evidence did they use to identify the suspect? And I'm like, wow, that's all they used. Like, I need to make sure I look out for that on my next scene. But there's a fine line between ethical true crime and telling the
Mhm.
stories with permission, and then something like that, just highlighting the serial killer. And that's where I'm like, no, I can't stomach it. I don't want to see it. I actually don't even like horror. Do not like
Wow.
horror movies. I do not like seeing death on screen being enacted. I guess it's just something that's come about from the job, and I can't do it. I don't like true crime that's portrayed in extra form. Like the Ted Bundy series, could not watch it. It's not because I feel I'm sensitive to it or I feel like it shouldn't be out there, but I think of those families. And a lot of those families now, there a lot of these families, the victims' families are still alive. Like
Mhm.
all these cases happened, they're not in the 30s and 40s, they're the 70s, the 80s, and even the 90s. And we have to be respectful of those individuals. They didn't die to be put on a documentary. And they didn't die for their individual their suspect to be plastered on t-shirts and be plastered on Netflix. They passed in vain and they were robbed of their life. And I truly believe that we need to start going away from that and still telling their stories because a lot of families want that awareness and highlighting individuals that also when they have foundations. A lot of these victims have foundations. Where in these documentaries for Dahmer do they include the foundations? Do they
Right.
include the
Right.
scholarships, a place to donate, a place to honor the victim? If you're
Mhm.
gonna talk about it, you need to make sure that you have a segment that shows these victims in true color. We get to see the lavish lives of the serial killers, but what about the victims? What
Yeah.
about their families? It's just not right.
Yeah.
I
That's
I always fear I was talking to a coworker and I told them if a case I work that's traumatic becomes a true crime case, I think I'm going to scream. I
mm,
don't want that for my family. I don't want that for me. I don't want any part in a documentary unless it's for forensic furthering and education. I would
mhm.
not, as a professional, not be involved. And I know that that family wouldn't want to be involved either.
Yeah.
Right.